Welcome to Not This, Not That, where we push our boundaries of understanding and perception. I am your host, Reverend Patricia Taginello, and I invite you to join me as we open to the possibility that things may not be exactly as you believe, as you've been told, that there could be more, that in our collective consciousness is the potential for the all. You can find Not This, Not That on sacredstoriesmedia.com and on Apple Podcasts and all streaming services on the Sacred Stories podcast. Today, we are continuing our four-part series with New York Times bestselling author James Redfield to expand our boundaries of understanding on the 12 insights that comprise the Celestine vision. The first 9 insights are from James' bestselling book, The Celestine Prophecy, and the 10th, 11th, and 12th insights from his follow-up books to the series, the 10th insight, The Secrets of Shambhala, and the 12th insight. Last episode, James went in depth on the first 3 insights, and today we are speaking on insights 4 through 6. So welcome, James Redfield, to Not This, Not That.
Thank you, Patricia. Nice to be with you again. This is fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So James, the Celestine vision you describe as the potential for a life marked by a higher spiritual connection. And I believe it's a beautiful roadmap for us to navigate what is currently happening in our world. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think that what is happening out there is a renewed interest in spirituality, and all of our challenges out there are about probably wake-up calls, waking up to a different attitude toward life, a different consciousness about life, and all of its aspects. We're blessed to be living in a time when so many scientific explorers out there have moved from just the physics or the materialist idea of the world to start to really put their logical thinking and their seeking of all the phenomena that we run into in life and exploring those. We have a new science of what I would call spirituality that's happening out there and has been for 20 years or so.
Yeah.
And that is letting us apply all the good principles of science, which is define the phenomena for what it is and how it looks, and in all aspects as you can, and then look at that phenomena in a way that tries to see how it fits in with life, with human life. What's going on. So when we talk about spirituality, we're really talking about the experiences of spirituality, that phenomena that can be described and then experienced in a way that can be compared almost scientifically and logically as to, what was that experience really about? So, and how does it fit in with human life? How does it work? So these are all great questions about spirituality. How do you prove it to oneself? And I say all the time that, what we're discovering about spirituality now, the consensus that's building, can be proved to oneself, because experience is the evidence. The quality of the experience, it feels the same to each of us as conscious human beings. There's a consensus about what it means, but also how to do it, how to tune into these higher experiences. So, it's a great time to be alive in spite of our challenges out there. And the solution to all our challenges are to settle into your highest consciousness and tune into your most guiding intuition that comes from a higher intelligence within. And so we're going to talk about all those experiences, because really the insights that I talk about in my work are the experiences of consciousness and of spirituality.
They absolutely are. And they are, as you say, evidence-based. I mean, each one of them, we can see the evidence when we're aware of them and practice them. So last time, we talked about the first three, but so before we dig into insights 4 and 6, can you briefly remind our audience what the first three insights are?
Absolutely. And let me also say that, these insights, within the word insight, it makes us sense or recall experiences that are inspiring. So an insight is sort of a looking at the world in a new way, discovering a new aspect of the world, and it's always energizing and, I would argue, inspiring. And I believe what's happening is that, as the famous protege of Freud, Carl Jung, talked about, we're opening up these archetypes, which are pathways in our minds and brains that we're designed to open up to in the course of human evolution. So his understanding of archetypes was very, very insightful and important. And I would argue that these insights that are happening out there in the world, in lifting humanity into a higher consciousness, are there, designed within us to fire up, and they fire up one at a time. I think there's a kind of beginning point, and then moving higher in consciousness as we open up all 12 of these archetypal revelations about life. So it's really important, I think, to understand them one at a time, because they each leads into the next, and at the end we integrate them all into a new way of life, a new daily routine that's the most liberating of all and the most inspiring of all once we get to that integration point. So that will be the last thing we talk about. That's the 12th insight. So it's fun to build up to that crescendo, because in the end, it's not a matter of trying to remember insights or even trying to keep our energy level at a certain point. What we really have to do is change the way we react to the world based on an old materialistic understanding, and moving into a kind of higher spiritual consciousness way of life, and that takes getting your sea legs and practicing, but that's ultimately exactly what's going to happen. So let's just again do a review of 1 and 2 and 3. That's on another podcast. The first one is the most important. It's the first pop into spirituality. It is the experience of meaningful coincidences. Now, Carl Jung called that synchronicity. But it's when you experience and are aware of meaningful coincidence. It's always something in the course of your life flow. You have a hunch that you should change careers, and suddenly you hear on the internet or from a person in the next seat on the train, a conversation about what's really important about that particular career, right? So what are the chances? The chances are really high that you would have been thinking that way, and you get on the train and there's that discussion right behind you. Now, the materialistic science that rules the world right now would say, well, that's just an arbitrary random event. It's just pure chance, means nothing. But once you realize that, wait a minute, that's just a short-sighted way of looking at it. The fact is, it does mean something, because it's a mysterious coincidence that has meaning. So it's important to know that's the first insight, because all the other insights make this flow of synchronicity. And as we'll see, the intuition that guides you into the place where synchronicities can happen. so that is will be evident as we go through. But synchronicity is the first step, because think of it: if you're talking to an atheist and you'd explain synchronicity, that person, if logical, would say, well, if that's real, if somehow this universe is designed this way, then that means we get help in life. We get metaphysical help in life. Some kind of helping hand is in the world. Some kind of higher power is guiding us or helping us on this journey. Then, of course, that would point directly to some kind of higher consciousness or intuitive connection with a higher consciousness within us that's developing. That would be direct evidence that there is a spiritual dimension to life. So the first begins there. All the others make that flow go at a faster pace and more deeply meaningful as we go on our journey. So it immediately asks the question, though, if synchronicity is real, does that mean all the people all through history that have invented all these new things that, spurred this whole wave of human evolution that recognizes more and more people as equal, that has been behind all the really key discoveries of human evolution? The sense that we can unify together, and empires or nation states or maybe the whole world can unify. Is that something that that's been going on all the time in history? So the second insight, of course, is looking at history that way. And if history is progressive in this manner, the Greeks discovered democracy. Before that, there was no concept of democracy, right? This is progress that we can see. So what that means is, of course, is if that synchronicity is real, then we all have a role in the evolution of humanity that we can discern and count on synchronicity to help us engage in and then evolve into our highest position in the world, that we can make a big difference in some way. Doesn't mean that all of us are going to be famous. Most of the great work in the world was done by people working alone in anonymity, but created a new outlook on life that changed the world. So we're all together. It has nothing to do with being famous. It has to do with finding your mission in the world that helps evolve the world. So the aha of this insight is, my God, if that's the core way we're led through in progress in this world, we can discover our own gift to the world.
Right, James, I have to interject, because today, just as evidence of what you're talking about, I was thinking of one of my authors, and I was thinking of something that I was debating whether I should, connect and share something with one of my authors. It was just, something about their book. And right immediately, right after I had that thought, I received a text from a friend telling me that she was, settling in today, and on her list was to finish reading that book, which was his book. And, random. We have not talked about that book in months, and it was just this completely random text that I received exactly at the moment that I thought of him. And my response to her is, this is what James Redfield would call a synchronistic event. And, I need to pay attention to my thought and about me connecting with the author. That is, like, I feel what you're talking about, that support moving through the the world of what we look for to help navigate and develop ourselves.
That's right. So if the first insight is the discovery of synchronicity in one's own life, Uh, the second insight is becoming convinced that, hey, that's the whole design of the human effort on this planet. And so humanity has been getting help. We can tune into that same consciousness where we find our journey to first discover what our mission is, and then to allow that mission to unfold with our life journey. So that's the second insight. Now, the third, of course, is what else is in the design of this evolution going forward? And of course, the question might be asked, what is karma real? Is the success we enjoy in this world due to a karmic design that we could figure out and step into, and therefore have more synchronicity because of that? And I believe that we know exactly, the science of spirituality has revealed the karmic nature of this world. And it essentially, as we covered, it's essentially around helping. So if you're a helper, if you're not just paying attention to what you can get from other people, but how you can help them on their journeys, help them become a synchronicity, have a synchronistic moment in the interchange with you, then what happens is that we can more and more are givers. And if we can be givers, we draw other givers into our lives. And this can be not just experienced, but proved to oneself. If you consciously seek to give to every person that you encounter, not just to get from, not just to get a synchronicity from them, but to offer one as well, go into your intuition to think, what can I say to that person that would help? It always comes from our personal experience or the way we solved a problem. And if we get the hunch to say that to a total stranger in a conversation, sometimes we hear, and a lot of times we hear, wow, that's exactly what I needed to hear right now. Thank you so much for saying that. So that's the way that the world is designed to work, where everybody's helped. Everybody has more synchronicity because of that. And by the way, discovering this karmic design is one of the, in my views, one of the basic, most wonderful discoveries that the human race has ever discovered, because really people have not ever tried that in mass before. But now we're starting to realize it. We can prove to ourselves that it works. We can have a luckier, happier, solution after solution oriented life. And it's karmic, because that's the karmic design if we're givers. Now, what if we're not givers? What if we unconsciously take it sometimes with people? What if we get short of energy and we seek to dominate another person to get in, to win their energy, and so make ourselves feel better? What if we sell people things that they don't need? These are all taking things that many of us still do unconsciously. And so what happens then is, if you draw into your life takers that basically act exactly the way you act. Because you're not a giver and a taker, you draw into your life more takers who slow your synchronicity down, mislead you, but it's a reflection, it's a gift. It's not a punishment, because we can see the reflection coming back at us with these takers in our lives. And it shows us the harm that we do. It's just that we have to interpret it that way. If you have a taker in your life, how do I take in that certain way? Again, this is a revelation. Once everybody understands how much better life goes as a giver than a taker, we'll understand the karmic design of this world. and it'll become primary in our understanding of how to have a happy, creative, problemless life. I mean, it will still be conflicts because none of us are pure with this, but we know how to. We'll more know how to move past see what we're maybe doing in a unconscious taking way and move back into giving, and that's the insight. That's the basic insight, to know how to get back on the light side of the giving side of life. And interestingly, in order to really do that, we have to move into the fourth insight, which is what we're talking about now. So if you're ready, we'll go into that.
Yes, absolutely. So for the audience, the first insight is noticing synchronicity. The second is the world has a spiritual design. The third is giving as a karmic design. And James, if I can have the pleasure of just announcing each insight, because it's just so much fun for me. The fourth insight is we refer to as human control dramas. And honestly, this is a biggie. Right, James? I mean, I don't know anyone who cannot relate or benefit from this insight.
Well, and it's a lot of fun if we don't take it personally. In other words, what happens is that we unconsciously take, and it's the main thing out there that holds the world back, that keeps it from evolving faster into a more enlightened state. It's because we get hung up in power struggles. And the fourth insight is realizing that we're taking unconsciously because of how we developed a way to fight back in our childhoods. And I'm sure it came, when we came in from the afterlife, it seems like we start off with a certain type of control drama, as though it's innate, it's genetic, but it's time to be cleared. This fourth insight brings us inspiration because it's the solution to a real basic slow down problem in terms of how fast we can evolve personally or collectively. And it works this way. If you're not connected, and the connection that I'm talking about happens in the fifth insight. Okay, so we could point ahead a little bit. But if we're not connected, and that's the case if we are engaging in power struggles with other humans, if we're connected, we have plenty of energy within us. We're very, very secure in who we are. We're able to not ever have to defend ourselves. We just are with that energy, and we can get this energy flowing through us in a giving action. But when we're short of energy, what happens is that, we run into someone who reminds us of somebody in our childhood, or who just is a taker and is taking energy. And then we have a choice to make. Do we fight back, which is a taking effort, which would be bad karma, or do we deal with that control drama or that power struggle in a way that diminishes it immediately? So that's the big insight in the fourth insight. We all get into power struggles. We can remember a whole childhood of one. You can go to any middle school and see the laboratory for of all of the control dramas being worked out. So it's something that we grow up with, and if you can call that defending yourself, not letting anybody lower your energy. There's a myth that we have to stand up for ourselves and fight back, and not let anybody take energy from us. The problem is that fighting back is actually a taking of energy from them. So these power struggles can just escalate because it's a fight against someone trying to steal our energy, we think. So let me just go over the typical ones. There are four that I can describe that everybody has run into. And it's very important to know, again, what these look like so that we can catch ourselves before we get drawn into a power struggle. Now, and let's talk about them from passive to aggressive. So the most passive way is what I've called in my books the poor me. Now, the poor me is someone, and when you run into poor me, everybody can recognize that. So you're going somewhere and you run into a poor me, and the poor me says something like, well, there you are, you finally came over, but you said you would call yesterday and you didn't. And all these things happened to me yesterday and I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. So everybody understands that it's the poor me, and the operation is the guilt trip. So the guilt trip is, it's one thing to say, and if we really said we'd called and didn't, then we should answer honestly. But usually the guilt trip is a kind of distortion of what really happened. But when we first start saying, oh, my, did I do that? We kind of defer to the other person for a while and look at them in a way that gives them energy. In other words, it feels like we lose energy in front of that. But it's when we give them attention, though, what happens is, and this is an old Kahuna adage that says, where attention goes, energy flows. So this battle in a control drama is really about attention energy. So, what happens if we face a guilt trip, we might question ourselves for a minute and then realize that we're going down in energy, feeling guilty. And then all of a sudden we think, wait a minute, that's not how it happened. I never promised to call her yesterday. And then you say, I did not do that. Yes, you did. No, you didn't. So there's the power struggle operating out there. So what do you do, though? And I'm going to say that, what do you do in that situation that does not get you in a power struggle? You say exactly what you are feeling. In other words, what you want to do is instead of a game playing situation, you want to get it back to a authentic conversation. So you first have to go authentic. And what that requires, and this is heroic in a way, what that requires, instead of fighting back and say, no, I didn't, you say, right now I feel guilt tripped. And that's called naming the game. Now, you have to be diplomatic the way you do that. But it's better to just say, here's what I feel right now. I feel like you're guilt tripping me. And what happens to the other person is they then have to look at the game, and you name the game, and it forces everyone to look at this game that's being played. It's not an authentic. And once you get that person to start to look that way, they go authentic. They may fight back, argue, no, I didn't do that, or you needed it, or anything that you deserved it. Yeah, anything they might say, you don't ever respond to that. What you do is you say, well, that's just how I feel. And you're safe there, because even if you're distorting, maybe you're forgotten the situation or whatever, but you're never going to get it resolved until you can diffuse that power struggle. And so you name the game, at the same time you give energy. Now, the giving of energy is the eighth insight, but we can describe what that is at this point, and that is you give energy by looking for the expression on their face to go authentic, to go centered, to go conscious at another level. So you try to see the consciousness, authentic consciousness in the person that you're giving energy to, and that attention fills you up first, so you no longer feel like you're being drained, because as we'll see, you just, as you give that with love, what happens is that it fills you up and centers you in every way, and then spills over on them.
Right. You know what, James, I just want to say that for the people listening that may say, I couldn't say, that made me feel guilt tripped, for an example, because maybe the dynamic in the human control drama is out of balance to a great degree, and in many relationships they are. What I will offer is that the practicing of all of the insights, the roadmap that the 12 insights of the Celestine vision offer, provides the foundation, provides the support to be able to navigate and balance out, these relationships and these dramas. So even if right now someone could say, I could never say that because that would create such a problem with a person, I'll just offer that with all of the insights, practicing them all, that will absolutely shift for them.
Well, as we'll see with all these insights, that they build upon one another, and then you come back around to really being able to practice them all the time. But the more we can give energy, the person is guilt tripping us because they need energy. They're so short, they have to win it from another person by guilt tripping them all the time. They need to win that attention, force that attention to themselves. So, the first thing is most important is to give the energy, even if you need to change the topic of conversation. But if you're giving energy, you can be free enough yourself, because you're filling up at the same time. And again, that takes some practice. None of these things are simple. They're simple, but they're not easy at first. They take practice. But what we're talking about is optimizing our lives. And there's nobody who's in a relationship that's characterized by guilt trips is happy. And the more that they can help put that issue on the table to whatever degree feels comfortable, the faster we can all get liberated from these control dramas. But you're exactly true what you say, especially as you get into more aggressive control dramas and having to deal with them. But let's just go on and show you the model. Let's say, and again, the second one I'll mention is not to poor me, but is slightly less passive in its approach, and that is the aloof. Now, the aloof person, the person who doesn't disclose, we've all known these people. So you're interacting and you say something like, "Well, what'd you do last night?" And you get, "Oh, I went out." And you go, "Well, where'd you go?" And you might get, "Well, I went to a couple places downtown." So so you feel that that situation, and it's a drama being played out. In other words, the drama is they're withholding information, so you will give them energy as you ask more questions about it. So that's the strategy of the aloof. You see that lots of times in these little dances in relationships, where the male is aloof and the female searches for the real person there, So again, though, we do the exact same thing. We shift. When that starts to happen, we feel it. We give it energy, let it flow through us and into the other person, and you look for a higher consciousness on the face of the person. And you name the game. You say, you don't I just feel like you don't disclose in this interaction. You're just you don't really give and allow me to know you, because that's the truth. And the truth always makes the interaction go authentic. And again, all you have to say is this: that's how I feel when I'm talking to you. And the person will argue or whatever they're going to do, but you just go back, well, that's just how I feel about it. Now, the thing about that is that you're helping them. Okay, this is a help. If you don't tell the truth, then you're not helping. You don't have to hit them on you don't get angry and say it. You do it with love every time. And what happens is that we get, even if they don't accept it, that's crazy. I'm not even going to think about that. And they don't talk to you anymore for a while. You just let that go, because they will as consciousness rises in the world, they will hear that from more and more people. And if you've planted the seed and you've done you're giving them that gift. So that's, again, that is a part of your giving. If you don't give that because it's too much trouble or you're afraid or whatever, you just have to do the best you can, because it's a part of giving, and you want to be a giver if you want your life to flow, and because that's the design. Now, let's go on a little further, and we'll go into more aggressive types with these control dramas. And again, I have to always say, we have to take the edge off all this. I mean, everybody has a control drama, and everybody's too sensitive, and we have to laugh at ourselves while we're bringing this into the consciousness of the world, because it's an immediate resolution of control dramas. And we know how to do it. I mean, that information has come into to the human knowledge, and we know that this isn't the way to deal with a power struggle in the world. And once we start to practice it, give intention to it, what happens is that you'll have success with doing this. More aggressive is the interrogator. Okay. Now, you've run into an interrogator field around an interrogator is when you start a conversation, and the person habitually finds something wrong with you. Something about how you say something about how you're dressed, something about what you didn't do already, just a criticism. Now, what happens in criticisms? Their strategy is, if I can find something wrong with you, you will defer to me. And that's exactly what happens. If you're around an interrogator who wins energy by putting people down in subtle ways, you are in a power struggle where that person's strategy is to find something wrong so that they can then have you give your attention to them. Sometimes if you're around an interrogator a lot, what you do is you're on your tiptoes all the time. You said, okay, what have I done wrong here that they're going to criticize me about? Let me find out, am I dressed okay? How should I talk to them? When you do that, they get your attention and they get your energy. But it's a control drama. It's a strategy to win over, to force people to give them energy. Again, what's the solution? Name the game. When I'm with you, I always feel criticized. Give them love. Say it in a loving way. If you say it in anger, it's just another control drama back. Say it with love, and it will diffuse the situation and make it go authentic. They can argue or whatever they want to do. You just stick to your guns. Well, that's just how I feel when I'm around you. And then the most aggressive is the fourth one. That is the Intimidator. The Intimidator wins energy from people by scaring them into paying attention to them. So the way that works, we all know intimidators. They walk in a room and you could feel it. They have a kind of domineering, I'm the person you should be worried about. I might go off at any moment. People sense that, and that's the one you have to be most careful with. When you have, families where there's abuse, that's what's going on. There's an intimidator there. And that's when you should withdraw, in my view. Otherwise, you have to say to them lovingly, you're intimidating. You're trying to scare me. You're always looking wild or about to blow up. And of course, again, sometimes withdrawal is the best case for this. But that's the four that's just the typical four that I always like to mention. And there's variations a little bit, but those are the four categories that one can look for in control dramas. And again, the whole idea is to awaken the world to these, and the only way to do it is to name the game, give love and energy, because that's what they want in the first place. Give them energy, try to make the conversation go authentic by naming the game.
And the beautiful part about your best-selling book, The Celestine Prophecy, is that it's written in story. And so these control dramas, and they kind of play out in the story, and you really can get a real sense, even, in addition to the beautiful explanation you just gave, but when you can see it in character and reactions and what's happening, it really makes it clear, and I know rereading the Celestine Prophecy recently, as I was reading through the control drama parts in the story, I was like, oh, okay, and I could see myself, or situations in my life, so clearly based on, reading it in the story of others.
This might be a time to really talk a little bit about the new edition of the Celestine Prophecy that I have my publisher has put together. I wrote a long afterword, and this particular edition is really meant for everybody, but particularly the two new generations. Hence the afterword, where I really talked about putting this stuff into practice, what we know now in terms of how is the best way to do that. And it gives them a little bit more information. It's not just a book about a story. It's a book about awakening and awakening to what's really going on in the world and the spiritual design behind the world. So the afterward is really important. I always like to say to people, we're trying to get this particular book in the hands of people who need it, especially to younger generations. I always like to say as well, the millennials especially, but also their children, are reading the Celestine Prophecy at new levels again, because they're asking the big questions. And so I would just, if you've got a couple of copies of the Celestine Prophecy on your shelf, give it to a millennial. Give it to a college student. Pass the book around, because again, it's about consciousness, and there's no greater time than right now to understand how to move into a more creative, more in tune and intuitively, in a more flow of synchronicity, that level of consciousness, because there's so much meditation going on. The materialistic world looks like a bunch of people screaming at each other. And people want to seek an alternative to that. And so that's why I'm out with this book and encouraging that people pass their books around to these two new generations.
I wholeheartedly agree, and it's why we're doing the series that we're doing, because it's time. It really is time. And it's encouraging, like we've talked about in the previous interviews, that collectively we have all helped with our conscious choices and conscious actions. We have all helped create this new time together. So we can continue to bring it forward. So
that's right. And again, we're also on my website, CelestineVision.com, or you can just Google James Redfield, it'll come up. We really are putting together, and we have it operating, a mentor situation, a mentoring system program, so that people can find mentors to act as sounding boards for them, and really a point of discussion about getting through control dramas or whatever it is that you're pursuing at this point. How to put all this to work in your career, how to break through to a new career, how to become more creative in something you want to establish. So we have mentoring and coaching available on the website for people that want a high speed feedback on how they're doing in this kind of personal evolution. So we felt like that was necessary, and we could feel that need, and so pass the word around about that. We have college students who are on a journey suddenly, who'll come in for some mentoring or coaching. So we're trying to make this available to as many people as possible at the lowest possible cost.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So CelestineVision.com, we encourage everyone to go to. James, we have two more insights to talk about today, the 5th and the 6th. So we've covered the first 4. The 5th is titled The Spiritual Connection. Can you share about that?
Well, the solution to the energy issue altogether is the 5th insight. So we're all operating at less than an optimal amount of inspiration and energy and flow of synchronicity, because we're only now tuning in to the full intuitive intelligence that we have. And that happens through a kind of contemplation. You call it prayer, contemplation. You call it a meditation. But it's a quietness with oneself. And it's absolutely the solution that has been known forever across multi-religions. It is the metaphysical, even miraculous place where you're given peace that is beyond all understanding. This is, in the materialistic world that we live in, unfortunately, scientists and others will scoff at such a notion, that we can be transformed inside in terms of our level of security and energy, just by a kind of repeated intention and asking for this. But I don't cut this short. I don't underestimate this. This is a miraculous kind of procedure that, again, you can prove to yourself works. You just have to practice it and make it an aspect of your life. So this is, and again, I just want to say that one more time. Don't underestimate the power of this. When I say it's a new time in the world, that there's never been more consciousness in the world, it's because more people are meditating in the world. And I believe that we most prove it to ourselves to work doing it in a certain manner. And I just want to quickly describe what that is. All meditation, you sit with yourself alone, with your eyes closed, at least at first, and you seek mindfulness, which really means a quiet mind, right? And that's the key of the basis of all the meditation and the mindfulness meditation that's happening out there. I sometimes call it a contemplation, because it's the intention to get in connection with a higher source of consciousness, meaning the source, the higher intelligence within which we're in contact with. It feels like a part of us at the level that we contacted. And I think there are only a few special steps into this that I'd like to talk about. One is intend to have an heart opening. Now, anyone who's felt love toward a child, toward the parents in our memories, toward our first, that we can remember when our first crush of love as an adolescent, the heart opening that happens when we recall departed loved ones. This is something that we can experience right in our heart region. It's a solar plexus popping. Maybe Eastern philosophy describes it best. It's a wave of energy that comes into us. It's a firing up of our chakras. But that doesn't matter. Every religion has a word for it, and a different ways to find it. But I believe if we go in and have the mantra around our intention, we want to open up our heart and feel this love connection. If God is love is written in all the songs and poetry, because it's a real experience that we can have. The materialists out there make it sound syrupy and naive and not the best way to carry yourself in the world. The world's too hard for people who love. That's all nonsense and defense mechanisms going off in materialistic people. Just know that this is our birthright. This is an archetypal opening that can happen. And I believe that the way this can best be done is by sitting alone. Like any other mindfulness meditation, whatever we start thinking about, well, we shouldn't be there, we don't have time for this, I'm afraid to sit by myself, I hate being by myself. All that comes in. And it's the first, 2 weeks, those will be the things that come in. This is a waste of time. This is crazy. I hate it. Intend that you move through that phase or you will quit. But stay with it. And stay with it because you want the emotion of love. Think about all the times you've ever loved. and just try to feel that again without any object. You know, you think of that departed loved one, and I know your heart will open. And when it opens, you can feel this love again. But it shouldn't be as an object toward anything or anybody. It's a state of love. Let me say that again. It's a state of love. This is our master emotion. It's our only spiritual emotion. And once you start practicing that, it becomes bigger. So you're letting go. Every time you're interrupted by a thought or another emotion, a lower emotion that's not love, just you come back to your center, back to your intention to find a love and a peaceful space, a love connection, and you keep coming back. We'll have emotional eruptions. You'll think about how many times you've been hurt in the world and who did it and what you should have done about it. Or anger will come up. Why is the world the way it is? Why are we facing these worldwide challenges all of a sudden? And it'll just, lower emotions will come up. But the more you practice, the more your lower emotions are healed. The more they come up, bounce off this love center that you have. That's a higher consciousness. That's a blessing. Call it a natural opening of an archetype, whatever you want to call it. But it is real. And if you practice it, it will be given to you. So I always say it just like that, because there's no doubt in my mind that it's available to anybody who stays through the first 2 weeks of practicing it. And you know, it's liberating, because the more that you let go of all these lower thoughts and emotions, and you come back to your intention and open and find that state of love and hold it for 20 minutes, the more you can wake up, walk out on your path in life, and you are living more and more in that consciousness. It centers you in your energy. It gives you the power of love. You know, week after week, it builds, and then you become the star of your own movie. You're not running away from these lower emotions with some coping device. That's been healed, and you know, love is how you operate, an emotion that you have, and it's the strongest, most wise emotion you can ever carry in your body. It's not fluff and syrupy and what silly people do. It's an immense power that you can use to center in yourself, so you have this wisdom and this intuitive guidance. And again, that's what comes in. Once you're not thinking about your coping devices and get back to them, and you open up this heart and in love, what happens is that your mind opens. And what you get is not chatter about what you should have done yesterday and how unworthy you are or anything else. What you get is a guiding intuition at every step of the way in your life. Now, nothing less than that is what you should settle for. But it's, again, something we do as an individual choice, but it's unbelievably transforming.
And it is definitely something to work for, right? Because we're talking about living in ultimately divine flow, right? Grace and ease, and collectively creating that new world together. Right, James?
That's right. And again, the more people practicing what we're talking about here, the more enlightened the world at large becomes. And in this space where we are listening to our guiding intuitions, flowing with synchronistic opportunities, that's the optimal flow in life that is our birthright. And we're getting to it at this moment in history. And that's pretty exciting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And like with all the other insights, one leads to the next. And the sixth one, the final one we'll be discussing today, is sensing a life mission, which I think many of us have had that inner, through millennia, that inner questioning, that inner yearning for what is our mission, what is our purpose, right?
That's what we all long for. That's the missing part of our lives. That's what we all strive for. It's what our coping devices are there to help us forget, because it's so, we only now begun to realize how we can open up to this mission in life. And of course, it happens in meditation. And remember that once you meditate, you start to live that same state: love, guiding intuition coming in your normal life. And what happens is you get an intuition to help wherever you walk in this life. There will be people that are waiting for you to say something about your life experience and what you do, how you've handled past events. And so every encounter then is a part of your mission unfolding. Because here's the way it works. You will be given guiding intuitions to say things to people out of the blue, and it'll be received well most of the time, especially when it's given with love. But you will notice that these intuitions have a certain area of life that they pertain to, right? It could be about health understanding. It could be about any of the professions in the whole world. You just kind of lean toward that being the thing that comes to you, that you're interested in, that you study and read about. That's how you know what it is that you need to be doing in the world. But your intuitions will show you what you're good at. It's a talent. And then you can go back in your past, and that's what has to happen in the sixth insight. You can go back in your path and just think about all the synchronicities that have happened and the hunches that you used to go talk to this stranger, or to sit in a seat, a particular seat on the airplane that resulted in a synchronicity. And you can chart your life path and ask the question, what have I been prepared to do? What's the knowledge base that my experience in life has prepared me to help other people with? That gives you your first clue of your unfolding mission. And, I tend to believe that you never completely understand your mission. You just refine it so that, it's always going to be intuitive. You can find a place to make a living where you use that kind of information, but it'll always be the what you do one-to-one. I mean, before I wrote any of these books, and some people say, maybe the best work I really did, most important work that I've done, was I was a spiritual counselor for years, working with teenagers, working with adults, families, couples, applying all this because of my understanding of growth. But, working one-on-one, and that may have been the most important, touching those people that way. Because, many went on to do some very inspiring things. But so it's not about being famous, right? It's not about writing a book always. It's not about starting a big company. It's not about that. It's about getting in your flow of helping. Maybe what you do with your grandchildren is the most important thing that could possibly be done with your life. It's all at the inspiring level for individuals, but don't think that if you don't write a great book, you haven't completed your mission. Start off at the level of what you say to individuals, because if we were all doing that, And I think you can see if we were all living these insights, then the world would change very, very quickly. So the sixth insight then is very, very important in that you have to know that once you've opened up your consciousness and you move in love and synchronicity and following your intuitions, you're going to have that revealed to you in real time with real people. And if you already know that, okay, well, I've got the ideal job in my mind already, then go for that. Go for that. Get trained, get in that job. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're in a corporation that you can work your way into a position where you are where you're supposed to be, and you can enlighten that world the best, stay there. Don't think you have to go and do something on your own if you don't want to. Get in an organization of any kind, but make it, you'll find the one and you'll be led to the one. That's the thing. We don't have to figure all this out ourselves. All we have to do is take these steps that we're guided to take, and the synchronicity will reveal it all for us, and we'll wind up right where we need to be in life to help the most people.
Yeah, James, I have to say I agree 1,000%. I'm an ordained interfaith minister, and after spending 2 years in seminary, the biggest question people had is, well, how do I use this? I'm a minister now, but I can't necessarily leave my job maybe and become start my own spiritual business or become a ceremonial minister or something like that. And they really felt like they really were called to go to seminary and then, use it as the mission. And our deans, I remember it was just so clearly, they said, it is who you are wherever you are. So if you're working in corporate America, you bring your consciousness. If you're an administrative assistant, be the most conscious administrative assistant you can. In every aspect of our lives, we can live our mission. It doesn't have to be defined by a certain title that we think we have to have. And I think that goes right along with what you're saying, right?
Absolutely. And again, find a group, discuss all this with people. We're creating a community at celestinevision.com just for this kind of talk and reinforcement and sharing. But it's just what's next, to really find places and groups of people that can be supportive of living life this way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Community, spiritual community is, I think, the next evolution of our consciousness, really absolutely living that. So CelestineVision.com, where James has created an online mentoring and group program. So audience, just to review just for a moment, because the discussion has been so rich. James started with reviewing the first 3 insights, which is noticing synchronicity, the world has a spiritual design, giving the karmic design. And that was where we went in depth with that with the previous episode. In this episode, James really went into depth on human control dramas, which is the 4th, the spiritual connection, which is the 5th, and the 6th, which we just discussed, sensing a life mission. Next episode, we will cover the 7 through 9 insights. So stay tuned for those. That will be following your intuition, giving energy, which we've talked about a few times. That one blew me away when I reread the Celestine Prophecy, because there's ways to do it that really can take you out of your mental body, and fulfilling human destiny. So James Redfield, this is just an absolute delight, and it's been such a pleasure to have you on Not This, Not That again, discussing the Celestine Vision and the 12 insights.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of fun for me. Again, we're trying to create some systems that'll help people with it. Anybody who wants to contact me after hearing this, I would be available to converse about it, especially in mentoring. We offer uh, a free, actually 30-minute discovery call, just to make sure that who is coming in knows what is in store and is clear about it and that sort of thing. But the main thing is to share all this, share it with your friends, share it with your kids, share it with your parents. It's the road opening ahead is either one of joining a collapsing darkness out there that is not aware of spiritual reality, and moving into the light side of life where you're a giver. You're reaping the rewards of good karma and high inspiration living. And again, that's where we're going. Everybody who's in fear, in any kind of corruption, they really want, they're operating at ego out of fear, but really what they really want is this kind of lived spirituality, because that's human destiny.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're with you, James, and I encourage everyone to join you as well. So CelestineVision.com, and again, the Celestine Prophecy, if it's on your shelf, share it. Many people I speak to, they've read it when it first was a bestseller in the 90s, and the younger generations are picking it up, and possibly pick up the new version, because James has written a beautiful afterword that's really wonderful as well. So James Redfield, the Celestine Prophecy, CelestineVision.com. Thank you again, James, for joining us.
Thank you for spreading word.
And thank you to our audience. Once again, this is the third of actually 5 interviews with James. So stay tuned for the next 2 coming up to round out all of the insights. You've been listening, as we mentioned, to Not This, Not That. And I'm your host, Reverend Patricia Caginello. And so until next time, be well. And I will say, read the Celestine Prophecy.